this is Sarah.
Hey, I'm Dolly.
And this is the Defender Podcast.
Where facts matter.
So once again, we had a great show planned out to speak about, and then everything changed throughout the week. So we plan to talk about voter suppression and talk about current events. And I think now we could sit here for 45 minutes in silence, and it would be a great representation of our weekend news.
Wow, I gotta be real, I'm kind of still hungover from the whiplash that was this week. Like so much.
I know. We started Monday with Trump's taxes, and
boom, in your face.
Between the debate, there were videos that were leaked with Melania Trump.
I know.
And it's like all of those things that, now we have Trump and half the White House has coronavirus. So it's absolutely nuts.
I feel like the news is like, you know what, hold my beer. Let's keep trying to make this bigger and better. Like there's just one thing after another that's bigger.
I mean, if 2020 was not bizarre enough.
It's insane, but we are here to talk about it. So I guess we want to start with the debates first. I mean, or the taxes. You want to start with the taxes?
It seems so weird talking about taxes now with so many things that have happened.
So many things.
But yeah, so we started Monday of this week, and Trump's taxes were leaked after years, I think at this point.
Years he's been hanging on to that. Holy cow. When that hit, I was like, taxes. It's insane.
And there were some bombshells there. And that, we're going to talk about the debate too, but that was something that was brought up in the debate, where for several years, Trump did not pay taxes. He paid as little as $750 for a few years. I paid more in taxes than that.
I paid more in taxes. I'm a social worker. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So, and I think it wasn't just the taxes, during the debate, some questions came up about it. And he basically said that, Obama laid out these new tax rules and he took advantage of them. But I think the question is, some of the write-offs, and there were his hair there was $75,000 for hair for The Apprentice. There were some write-offs that went to Ivanka Trump for
I gotta say though, like, and I don't like giving Trump wins me personally, but you know what, this is the system. He was a businessman at the time, and so like, yes, obviously it's unethical and there's an issue there, but here's the big question to everyone. Is the issue with Trump being able to get away with all these things, or is it because the system is set up for him to get away with all these things?
I mean, just a few months ago, we found out that Amazon didn't pay taxes. And they're one of the biggest companies in the world. So yeah, I think fundamentally the issue definitely lies within our tax system, where you have everyday Americans that, are struggling.
Are carrying the weight of the country, honestly.
And then you have these big companies that are able to find these loopholes. So that was something Biden talked about in the debate, is getting rid of the Trump tax cuts. So
that's a whole other conversation.
Right. It's out there on the table. So
which I'm glad it came out. I think it's interesting it's coming out now, right before the election. However people want to interpret that, they can. But I think it is important. I think it was really important that we finally did get to see, like, what is he really working with, like what really happened, because he's been saying for all these years, I pay millions in taxes. And like, yeah, you probably pay millions in property taxes, but like you're completely negating federal taxes, and everyone's I feel like the biggest argument for Republicans and even libertarians are like trickle down economy. And I think this is a really great example of how that's just not real life. Like, yeah, in theory, on paper, it's a great idea, but you have these huge companies like Amazon, for instance. Let's not even shit on Trump right now. Let's talk about Amazon, which is a really huge corporation that employs millions of people. Wait, I probably got that wrong. Maybe not millions of people, thousands of people.
There's a lot.
A ton of people. And though there's a lot of people that this has come out in the news previously, a lot of people working for Amazon who are on welfare, who are on welfare, and he's not even paying taxes to support the employees.
There's definitely something fundamentally wrong with the system itself.
So that's a whole nother conversation, but I think it was good that we got to know.
as quickly as it came out, though, it was swept under the rug with, we had the debate on Tuesday.
Ugh.
And that left all of us, it took me 2 days to like wash off the feeling of what the debate was. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts were on the debate.
You know what? I'm fucking embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for literally everyone involved. I'm embarrassed for our country. I am just so sad that I don't know if you happen to notice clips on YouTube of other countries, their news channels covering the debates, and literally these other countries laughing at us, literally laughing at what this was. And I think that the debate was just the epitome of what's been happening during this political time. It's just a shit show. It was a mess on either side. Biden was not strong enough. Trump was perfectly Trump, 100% on brand.
Well, so let's talk about that though with Biden. And I do agree that it was not just one person or the other. Like, we knew one of the biggest issues was the interruptions, and
like, turn the microphone off. Can we like
well, I mean, they're saying even if they would have turned the microphone off, you could still, they're so close together and you're yelling at each other, so you would still pick up the mic. But yeah, I mean, I think on all sides, like, none of it was presidential. You had a moderator that could not control either one. But do you think that that was part of the strategy on Trump's part?
100%. Just from a PR marketing perspective, whether you love or hate the guy, he is so painfully consistent. Like, he is so good at getting in those little things, like those little clips on the side.
It was a lot farther than I think he typically takes it, though. And
true.
This was on Fox News. They said there was Trump interrupted Biden and the moderator 154 times during the debate. And that was 51% more than what he interrupted Hillary Clinton during her debate.
Wow, I'm so surprised by that. That's really strong.
Yes, I thought that was interesting, and I wondered because Biden does have a speech impediment. He has a stutter.
And that I understand too. Like, he needs to be slower. He needs to get his stuff out slower. And I get that. But that's when we come down to, like, who is the strongest candidate to be up against someone who is Trump, who are like Trump. Like, you need someone who can carry that with charisma. Like, he has a lot of charisma, Trump. Like, he has a really strong fan base, and Biden's just not on that level.
Yes, but the comments that I got, I have a lot of family who are conservative and are Trump supporters. I have family who are hardcore Trump supporters, and every single person that I talked to after the debate said, I thought they were going to be like, I love it because he says what he thinks, and I thought they were going to absolutely love him just kind of being himself. And that was not the sentiment that I got from people.
Really? I'm surprised by that.
I had a lot of family members, a lot of people on my social media were saying, like, this is an embarrassment.
Wow.
We need both to be more presidential. Like, I heard that from everybody, and it was the first time in a long time that I've agreed with a lot of my family members. But to me, that was a little bit refreshing.
That's good. Yeah, that's really nice to hear.
Okay, like, this was a mess, but at least there's we still have some humanity to where we can all recognize that we deserve better. Because at the end of the day, I mean, over and over and over again, the sentiment was that America lost, Americans lost.
I think you brought up a great point too, that I definitely don't want to gloss over. Like, Biden's history, his speech impediment, that does play a part in his interactions with everyone. And I think it's really important to note, like, how amazing, like, even though he wasn't as strong as Trump in this situation, it was still really amazing that he was able to perform in the way that he did. And I think he kept his cool. I'm not quite sure if everyone would have responded in the way that he did in the same situation. So I think that, like, I know there's a lot of memes going around of him, like, would you just shut up, man? Like, yeah, that's just a really human moment. Like, you're just trying to hang in there. And so I think that, that's really important for the representation of people who have grown up in a way that they needed a little extra support. So I think that was a really cool moment for kids out there who have stutters themselves or anyone who is differently abled in any way. So I thought that was really a powerful moment for Biden specifically, and just for the message that he puts out there, just being, different in any other way. I think it was a really a human experience.
I agree. And again, I mean, the whole thing was really just a mess. It was really hard to get to the heart of what they were saying. And like we talked about it last week and we're like, we are so excited for this. Like we can't wait to see this debate. And
then afterwards we're like, what do we do with this?
No, like what was I expecting? Like was I putting too much emphasis in it? Because it's not out of character for the way that, Trump, his typical, how he acts in debates. But I think 2020 is different, and I think that's why we went into it wanting to hear these two candidates talk about the issues that we're facing in America. Because I mean, this is a year unlike any other. There are people who have lost their businesses. There are people who have lost their family members due to coronavirus. There are people who just dealing with the anxiety of everything that's going on. I am a mother of children, and having to make the decision for my family of my child. He does need the interaction and to be in school, but I also need to keep my family safe. So there's a lot of things that everyday Americans are facing. We have the civil unrest that's happening, that where you have a large segment of our population that is in pain. And all of those things, like we deserve to have those things addressed. And I think everything got so swept
muddied,
under the rug and muddy that it was so hard to see through the screaming and the interrupting.
There were some good moments, though. There were some really good moments. I really did appreciate Biden, like at one point, literally just looked right in the camera and was speaking to the millions of Americans who have been affected by COVID and by, the shutdowns and like you said, their job loss and just life loss in general. And so I think that was a really powerful moment that really, I think Trump should have handled much differently, because I think that did hurt him, especially this close to the election. And then of course him coming out with his coronavirus diagnosis like a day later. I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, and we do have the clips of him talking about when he comes out, he's wearing a mask and he's 200 feet away from people. And then the next day here, we have his coronavirus diagnosis. I wanted to go back to the debate really quick, and we will talk about coronavirus in the White House. But you are a social worker, and you work with children every day, and you work with people who do have a background of abuse. And I left this debate. For one, I watched it with my 12-year-old son. Ooh. And that was really difficult for me as a parent, because he's in civics right now. He's learning about American history. And it was a really sad moment for me as a parent. Like I went to bed that night just really feeling sad. I woke up the next day feeling sad. And I wanted to get your take as a social worker and people who do have a background in trauma and the way that just how chaotic everything was. It was just crazy. Like how do you feel like the effects of that on people who have, I know that's a lot to unpack, but
it comes with layers too. So we should have, again, it's layers. So we're going to back up a little bit. And I think Trump has established himself as a very opinionated, I can't even think of a different word, bully. I mean, that's just, it's part of his whole shtick. And that's something that his people love. And so he is really hard on people. And so we go back to the Hillary and Trump debate where he was circling her and being very intimidating. And that just sets the stage for literally how he behaved at this debate. I feel obviously not as strong last time as it is this time, but I mean, that sets the stage and the tone. And so for him to be talking over people, first of all, him attacking the moderator, who's a Fox News person. I thought that first of all, that just blew my mind. I'm like, you have someone that you have perceived to be an ally to you that you're now attacking. So now literally everyone is an enemy. That's what you're putting out to the American people. Everyone is an enemy and Trump is protected and everyone's being mean to Trump and nobody can have an opinion otherwise. So like the fact that he was even debating with the moderator, that's a whole nother thing as well, like a whole nother layer to that as well. The whole thing, just talking over each other, being aggressive, trying to downplay things, like these are all these are all traits and techniques that abusers use in relationships. And I hate saying that because I know that we try to be nonpartisan here, but like that's just fact. Like this is a man, a grown-ass man who is being so incredibly aggressive on a presidential debate stage as the president of the United States. Like this is the rhetoric that he's putting out there. It is okay to be abusive to people. That is what he's trying to put out there to the American people. And it's working. It's working because the people that back him the most, that entire community of people, they hear it, they love it, and they're stepping up. And then you're creating this cycle of abuse that just keeps happening, right? And it just trickles down from there. And then his comments about drug use and like making Biden feel like shit about his son who has conquered his addiction.
At that moment too, you know, Biden wasn't talking about his son Hunter. He was talking about his son Beau, who passed away.
Yeah.
Like during the time that he was vice president. And
first of all, don't talk about people's kids. Like, isn't that just a rule that we just all know? Like, you don't talk about people's kids. You don't do that, especially when you know the history of Biden and his family. Like, it's just so sad that he would shoot that low. Like, we know that he's low and that's like his thing, but like, why would you shoot that low? And then you're effectively telling millions of Americans, millions of people affected by drug abuse and drug addiction, not just the people themselves who are affected by the drug use themselves, but their families who have to deal with this situation as well. You're telling all these people that it's their fault, that it's their problem, and it's not. Like, drug abuse and drug addiction is a disease, and it's a crisis.
Yeah,
it is.
Exactly.
It is. So he's saying all these things about Biden's son who has conquered his addiction as of late, who's making strides to try to do things the right way and to get better. Like that's a positive story for Biden's son. Like he had a drug addiction, he's working on it, and now he's in a place where he is in recovery and working towards active recovery every day. So I think that actually worked in Biden's favor.
I agree. It was a very human moment.
Exactly. A human moment. I think that's something that Trump has not been able to really master. Like, yeah, he connects with the American people in a certain special way, but never in like that humane, real, raw, like genuine way. And that's where Biden succeeded in this debate, because he's able to come to terms with that and just be open and honest with the American people. And that's something that Trump has just actively not been able to do since the very beginning.
Yeah. And even me and my husband, we talk about that a lot too, there's moments where he would get so far, in my opinion, if he just showed a little bit of humanity. And I know that's part of his personality and his persona, as being this like very strong person, and you know, that's okay. But I think there's also moments where, you know, we have to come together and you have to show the humanity and even with the civil unrest, you know, this is a moment where there's a lot of people in pain. Like what you're seeing in the streets, that is a result of people like real pain and real trauma, that a large portion of, like, you serve all Americans, not just the people who support you.
Exactly. And that's where he's missing the whole point of the presidency.
Absolutely.
Like,
the empathy and the humanity, I think, is something for me that I always, where I get the most disappointment from is when we don't get that in the times that we really need it. And especially a year like
that's really tough. I hear you. I feel like if Trump could just one day be like, you know what, I fucked up, man, I'm trying. Here's my solution. I think he would get so much better support and followers from that. No, of course not. Of course not. And again, that's just him as a personality and him as a person. Like, that's just, I wouldn't say narcissism, but Like, it's just really, really hard for Trump to just admit any wrongdoing at all. Like, and I don't want to get ahead too much, but like, even with his coronavirus diagnosis, I feel like no matter what happens, like no matter how severe it is or how like easygoing it is for him in terms of symptoms, he's going to come out of it being like, it was easy. It's no big deal, because he's already doubled down on that so much that if he comes away from that now, it's like, that's just his whole thing.
There was so much to unpack with the debate, and I know there's more things that we can talk about there. You know, we had the moderator gave Trump the opportunity to speak out against white supremacist groups, and he didn't. I mean,
he didn't. Yeah, he just didn't.
He had that opportunity, and he said, you know, I want peace. You know, tell me who you want me to denounce. And Biden said, the Proud Boys, and he said very, very plainly, he said, stand back and stand by. And there's so much that, you know, people have broken this down, and like, what exactly does it mean to stand back and stand by? And we know for sure that that group, the Proud Boys, that they took that as a call to arms.
They did. They made shirts like overnight. They made shirts that said stand back and stand by.
They updated their logo, and they were excited by the fact that they got called out during the debate. And it was almost like, okay, I'm telling you to stand back, but if this election doesn't go the way that we want it to, or if there's more civil unrest, stand by.
Yeah.
And you know, he came back out after there was a lot of members of the GOP who said, like, anytime we are given the chance, if we need to speak out against white supremacy. And that was an opportunity that he didn't. I mean, it's afterwards he kind of backtracked and changed what he said. But I mean, that's one of those things where any opportunity that you're given to speak out against something like white supremacy, like, why even leave the gray area?
But he loves the gray area. He loves the gray area from the very beginning. He loves to not say too much, because then he'll be held to that, versus like if you just say a little bit, you can like interpret it the way you want later on. And that's just something he's been doing since the very beginning. He loves that there's so much conflict, because the more conflict he has, the better chance he has at the election polls, honestly. It was really frustrating to hear that. I have a lot of friends that are people of color that I love so dearly, and to hear that on the presidential stage during a debate, like, this is our representative of the American people, and just keeps coming back to the point that he just does not care about the actual everyday American. That's just fact. Like, there's too many examples to prove otherwise. There's just too much. And it's really frustrating, because I feel like the people deserve more, even if it is Trump. Like, if he does get elected again, just do better. Like, do better.
Yeah. Well, and it's not just, I mean, it's a system as a whole, again, that you have Biden, you have Trump, you have the moderator. These are three older white men that are just not a representation of our country. And you're debating these things, and whether it's the social unrest, or you're talking about racism in America, or you're talking about women's rights, you're debating these issues that are affecting real people in the United States. Or you're talking about coronavirus, like, it's this thing that's out there that isn't something real, that's affecting real people. And while there's people sitting in their homes watching you and looking to you and wanting to find some bit of peace and some semblance of hope for the future, and I just don't feel like that's what we got at all. If
from
anything,
either side.
It felt like you had three men so out of touch with reality and so out of touch of what's really going on right now, in a time where we need leadership more than ever. And again, the whole thing, like, we know it was a shit show, but I think it was so much more than that. I think it was a really sad moment for
everyone,
for our country. And you know, I hope things get better, and you know, I try to remain hopeful for, you know, there's a lot of things that get me excited, where we see a lot of, you know, young people and some of the protests, like, those are things that get me excited for the future, but I think there's also a lot that like we really need to look inward right now.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm really interested to see, like, I don't know if we're going to be able to have debates right now, just with the status of Trump's health. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. If he's in a good enough health to where they can do it virtually, that's going to be interesting. So it really will be telling to see what happens in the next couple of debates if we're able to have them. And if we're not able to have them, like, what does that do for Trump and his response to that, and for his like whole battle plan going into the elections? Is he going to try to delay the elections? Is he going to do, like, we don't know. So it's just really interesting. Time will tell.
to say the least. So
Yeah.
so let's go into talking about the big thing that happened. We had the debate on Tuesday, and then I believe it was
Thursday. Like 1
Thursday,
a.m. he dropped that tweet. 1
well,
a.m.
Thursday evening before I went to sleep, we found out that his top aide, Hope
Yeah.
Hicks, was positive for COVID. And we knew for sure that she had been in close contact with the president. And then if you're like me, you woke up to the news that
Yeah.
Donald and Melania Trump had tested positive for coronavirus.
Which was crazy. Like 24-hour news cycle. How crazy is that? Like you just wake up and like this gigantic piece of news. You're like, holy shit. Like what? It was nuts.
Yeah, and I think it's just gotten weirder. Not. I mean, the president is he's our leader
He's
of
our
our
leader.
country.
You don't want him to die.
Well, not even that. I mean, him just being sick, and we know that he was brought to the hospital. He was brought to Walter Reed Military Hospital on Friday, Saturday. So we definitely don't want that. And I will say first, before anything else, that I fully wish him recovery and full recovery, quick recovery.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Him and his wife. And in the days following his announcement, not even the days, because there wasn't that much time, we have just seen this whole group of people in and around the White House that are now positive.
So many people. It's crazy. It's almost as if masks and precautions could have potentially helped. I don't know. I'm not a doctor though.
Yes. Well, it all seems to stem from the Rose Garden, the Amy Coney Barrett,
Yeah.
this nomination event. There was over 150 people there.
Yeah, I looked up a picture after I like heard that, and I looked up a picture and I was like, holy shit, there was so many people there. Like so many people super close together, no masks.
Nobody wearing masks.
And all those people see those, like it's so crazy that this one event could like stem so many infected people.
Become a super spreader event.
And it's at the White House, which is protected because it's in this little like federally protected area. So that's interesting how the laws and rules don't even affect the White House.
Well, there is a video that I saw from the event, and you have Kellyanne Conway, who we know now has COVID, and she was in close proximity to, there's two senators that both tested positive. We have the senator from Utah and North Carolina, and one of them was there, and then you see her lean over and talk to Chris Christie. So this was before Chris Christie announced that he was positive. So I saw that video and I was like, it's only a matter of time before he also announces that he's positive. And it was last night that he also announced that he's positive as well. So right now, I believe there were 7 or 8 people who attended the event, including the president and his wife. As well as we have 2 senators that are both on the Judiciary Committee for the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. We have Kellyanne Conway. We have Chris Christie. There's a number of White House aides.
These are like important people. These are like really high profile people. Yeah.
A number of White House press. There was 11 people who were event planners for the debate that happened on Tuesday, which again kind of says that, okay, if these people from the event planning committee for the debate were positive, that somewhere somebody had to become exposed earlier than that. And it just seems from the way things are playing out that it did stem from that one event.
Which is crazy because that's days, right? So you have this huge event with hundreds of people, everyone's being exposed, right? And then you have the presidential debate and all those people being exposed, like, and then there's all this time between like exposure to actually announcing it. So you have like hundreds of thousands of people who could have potentially just been spreading this for days.
Yeah, well, Trump had a rally later in the week. So the debate was Tuesday. We did see that his family who attended the event, they were not wearing masks. I know a few of them have said they've tested negative. We know that Joe and Jill Biden, that they both tested negative. So I think this is another one of those situations where we're going to see things develop over time. But we do know that President Trump did have a rally, and then he had another fundraiser event, and then the next, it may have been
he announced it. Yeah, he announced it that night.
That night, he said he started feeling symptoms in the afternoon, and then announced that night that he was positive.
Do you think that do you think he knew he was positive before doing the rally and all of that, the fundraising event and all of that?
I want to give him the benefit of the
doubt. I know.
And say no, but
like the turnaround time on.
But he did at that point have to know that his aide, Hope Hicks, was positive. So he at least he was exposed to it. He may not have gotten his positive test result back, but he at least
knowing you're exposed, like you need to self-quarantine until you have results. It's just like,
I mean, that's just
common courtesy and responsibility.
Like, why take the chance of exposing anyone else?
But it shows where his priorities really are, though. And I feel like a lot of politicians are that way. I'm not going to say this is just a Trump issue.
I mean, this is election season.
You know, like you're running for president, you're going to fucking do what you got to do. But also, this is like
he has to quarantine for 10 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be out of that, and this is like home stretch for politicians.
Yeah.
Like they're out there, they're doing events every single day. So, I mean, I'm sure in his mind of every event that he has on his calendar is very important to do. So until, you know, if he was feeling fine, he maybe didn't feel like he needed to wait for his test result to come back. But
it's hard because this is the time, like you said, home stretch. Like every moment in a presidential campaign at this point, Biden included, these are all very strategic events, strategic timed events. Like these are all very important puzzle pieces to the ultimate goal of the election. Especially now with so many early votes coming in right now, like people voting by mail more than usual, like because of the pandemic. Like this is the time where every little step of the way is important because you don't know how many ballots are being counted along the way. Like what happened last week, like 7,000 ballots in Florida alone were received, something like that. Like that's a lot.
People are already getting many states are doing early voting already. And in Florida, people are already filling out their mail-in ballots and sending them back. So, I mean, like we are in the midst of election season right now.
Exactly. So this is detrimental to his campaign, whether or not the whole COVID conversation, I just mean like the timing just sucks for him. So I'm really interested to see what happens.
Let's talk. I totally agree. But we do know that Friday that Donald Trump was brought to the hospital. He was brought to Walter Reed Hospital, and they said at the time that it was precautionary. Do you agree with that? I feel like it has such a negative connotation for the president to be brought to the hospital. That affects stock markets. That affects our allies. That affects
I really thought about this because it's so there's so much PR and marketing wise behind this decision, as we've talked about. So I get it, right? This is the president. You can't fuck around. Take him to the hospital. If anything goes south quick, you're there. You have everything you need. Like it's good to go. So I get that from like a health standpoint, from just like, this is the guy leading the free world right now. Like, so we need to make sure he's good and in working order, right? But on the other hand, time after time, all these medical professionals saying, stay at home, don't go to the hospital if you don't need to. Like, it's much more comfortable to be in your own bed. Like, he's the fucking president. He can have a doctor come in a second or even just be at his bedside the whole time. So like that seems very strange that they would bring him to the hospital. So like I'm on both sides. And I read somewhere that And it makes sense now, just thinking about the UK Prime Minister and how he was leaving the hospital after COVID and how he looked like he was basically knocking on death's door, essentially, and like how that image.
They've come out after and said that they were prepared to come out and say that he might possibly could have died, Boris Johnson.
Yeah. So I can see how.
And we know with COVID, like there's a lot to learn from it, but we also know that it can progress very quickly. But so there has been a little bit of controversy too with even the doctors who are at the hospital. I don't know if you've heard this. This just happened last night. But you have the White House physician, Sean Conley. He went and did a press conference yesterday and said basically that the president is in good health. He's doing good. He has not been on supplemental oxygen today, and he hasn't had a fever. Well, then you had Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, who then went to the press directly after this press conference and had a completely different account of what was happening. And he said that his vitals were actually very concerning and that the next 48 hours would be critical in terms of his care. So
I feel like whatever's out there is not the truth. It doesn't even matter if it's pro or con on the situation. I feel like we can't trust anything right now because it is such a divisive topic, and such a delicate situation too, that our president is sick with coronavirus during a very contentious time.
And there's a lot of implications. So they do have to be careful with what they say, but we also expect that there is some transparency from what's coming from we hope that there's transparency so the American people can have a bit of peace in knowing what's going on. And
it's hard to trust, and I hate this. I hate that 2020 has made me feel like I can't trust anything. Like I think in previous years, the president going to the hospital, like during a time like this, we could be like, okay, he's getting the care he needs. But now I'm like, I don't know if it's a political ploy. I don't know if it's a PR thing. I don't know if he's dying. I don't know anything.
That was the first thing that came to my mind of like, you had a terrible week. You had your taxes came out. You had
I don't know.
Terrible debate that everyone is saying was the worst presidential debate ever. You have these recordings that were released from Melania. And then you have, it's announced that you have coronavirus, and then everything else that happened in the week completely goes away. So, I mean, that was like an initial thought that I had. Other people I spoke to said the same thing.
But like, is that a good political ploy though? Like, wouldn't that just hurt him more because he has been so against COVID in general? So like now I'm just like,
I don't think that's what it is at all. I think now that we know that there is this outbreak that's happening at the White House that seems to stem from the Rose Garden event that happened last weekend. I think 100% somebody was infected, and I do believe that they're positive. But again, it just goes back to that we're left thinking, what's true, what's not, because of just the way that things, tend to play out.
And that's just like the best example for America as a whole right now. Like we can't trust anything. We don't feel comfortable. We don't feel invested in what's happening. Like, I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, it's a very uneasy time.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this. And again, I truly hope that everyone who's been infected will heal and be perfectly fine moving forward, because this is not a fun thing to be dealing with right now. So I truly want to make sure, I don't want to wish this on anyone. So I truly hope that everyone makes it out of this happy and healthy. But my question is just from like a political standpoint, if Trump does pass away so close to the election, like what do you think is going to happen? Because that technically means that Pence is up, right? He's our next in line.
I have read some articles of, hypothetical, like what would happen. I don't want to speculate until, right now, I think we just go off the currently where we're at, and he is still upholding his presidential duties. We have the 25th Amendment because of John F. Kennedy that was added to the Constitution that says that the power would go to Pence if Trump is unable to complete his duties, or God forbid something worth happens. So for me, I don't want to really think about hypothetical, because let's just hope it doesn't get to that point, and we'll have to see how things develop.
Yeah.
But I mean, it could, I mean, it's very, I would say nothing is off the table at this point, that in the next 48 to 72 hours, we'll have a better idea of the health of everybody involved.
I think it's just so interesting that all this craziness that's been happening, especially in the past week. I'm just thinking about like your kids when they're finally in high school and they've received that textbook. What an insane unit, right? Like just a whole unit just on 2020. Like nothing else.
I truly believe that,
crazy.
not too far down the road, that there will be college classes dedicated to the year 2020.
Just 2020 101.
It's true. It's true. It's been the most bizarre year.
So weird. And I feel like if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Like we need like mutant pigs flying at this point. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, at this point, nothing would surprise me.
It's emotional whiplash, honestly. This whole, especially this past week, just like with one thing after another, it's like you just want some type of normalcy, and we're not going to have that. Even after the election, we're not going to have that. No matter what the results are, I can see it being contested on both sides, and I just don't think the American people are going to have an answer for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be that time after the election ends where there's a lot of mail-in ballots that have to be counted. There's a lot of states that recently, we kind of talked about this, me and you, last week, that there's a lot of states that have updated their laws to where as long as your ballot is postmarked by election day, they'll actually count it. In some states, it's like up to 2 weeks. So you could potentially have states that are, if they're leaning on the results of their mail-in ballots, that it could be a week or two that we're waiting to get the full results. So I think that period after election day is going to be a very uneasy time.
Yeah.
Because
unless it's a landslide in either way, we're not going to have an answer for weeks.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's also, if the result says one thing, the immediate results of the early votes of people who go in person and election day, and then as we're starting to kind of trickle in and get some of those mail-in ballots counted, there could be a result that says one or the other, but in reality, there's still these millions and millions of ballots that have to be counted.
Yeah.
That could possibly shift in the other way. And then I think we really could be looking at civil unrest in the country.
Oh, definitely.
And that's a fear of mine. I know I read an article that the FBI is already counting on that. They're already putting actions in place.
We definitely don't want a civil war happening, essentially. Like,
yeah, and that's something that it's been a thought that's crossed my mind. And even from, I said earlier that, I do have family who is very conservative, and that's even something that they speak to a lot of, we're about to have a civil war. And I think that's a lot of people I think that's a genuine fear that a lot of people have right now. And, I don't know, we know that there's a lot of influence that's done on social media, and is it the social media that's sparking this fear, and the fear is unfounded, and that's really not a place that we're going to go, or is that the state of where we're at right now, where we are so divided, and you have these very radical right and radical left that could come to a head after this election. I think that's something that we'll have to see. But that's definitely something that has crossed.
Yeah. I think it's easy for people to think that, like, let's just use the Civil War as an example, or like it wasn't even that long ago. Like if you're looking at the timeline of time and space, like it wasn't that long ago. And I think it's really easy for especially the younger generation right now in America to think like, oh, that was forever ago, that could never happen to us. But like history repeats itself. We're forever changing. Like people are alive today that were alive back during Jim Crow era. It'll be complicated. It'll be very complicated. And scary because things are being done through technology now and social media. And that's a whole nother conversation that we will not get into
Yes,
today.
absolutely. I mean, that is a topic that we
Yeah.
will speak about because, there's a few new documentaries that
Yes.
I don't know that they're necessarily new, but they're starting to get more traction of talking about the election and talking about social media and how those
Yeah.
were influenced and data and all that. So that's definitely a topic in the future
Yeah.
that we'll
Just
want
do
to
your
talk
research,
about.
everyone. Just question everything, even if it's something that you feel is real. Like, just question everything. Like, even us, that's the whole purpose of Ballot Defenders. Like, we are here because we want to bring the actual facts. Like, we are researching things. We want to make sure that what we're saying is correct and truthful, so you can make your own opinions and your own decisions based off that information. Like, what's out there is very muddied and very confusing, and it's coming from all sides. And like, we are doing the heavy lifting by sifting through it all for you. So keep checking back every Monday for new topics, new breakdowns of current events, and all the other political goodies that will be popping up between now and election day.
Yes, I mean, there's no telling at this point. Things change so rapidly,
Yeah.
and we go into all week. We're talking about one topic of something that we're going to discuss during the podcast, and then everything changes so quickly that even on the fly, we're having to kind of divert and talk about different things.
It's so hard because there's just so much. It's like, it's not even like we can tackle one thing at a time because it's so much. It's so much thrown at us all the
Yeah,
time.
well, and that was even, there's a lot of issues when it comes to voting that are very serious, and we had to look like, okay, we're starting this organization. There's 60 days until election, and we're two people. It's you see it, Ballot Defenders right here. I love your gun fingers.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, there was only so much that we could focus our attention on,
Yeah.
and that was getting dates out there of timelines, trying to push for registrations, and then we're going to be focusing on the amendments starting not
Mhm.
next week, the week after, but trying to push early voting. And but there are a lot of other things that eventually after this election season that we will be talking about voter suppression.
Yeah.
um, and that's a really big one that is gonna, we'll in a few weeks we'll be talking about during the podcast.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I'm tired. Are you tired?
It's been a long week.
I'm so emotionally exhausted. It's like, ugh, can we just have something good? Can there just be one good thing? Universe, send us a good
Well,
thing.
I do have some updates. So if
Okay.
we talked about everything in current events. So more to come that will be developing over as things happen. We'll be talking about them during our podcasts. But we do have the presidential debate happening on
Yes.
Wednesday. So that's moving
I am
ahead. There
excited for that because Pence is a very different human from Trump, and so is Kamala, obviously. So I'm really excited because I think Pence is more professional and more experienced in politics, and so I think that will be a really nice, hopefully nice, like meaty debate. Like, I'm really looking for some really good
I
back and
agree. I
forth.
think
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get the debate on Wednesday with the presidential debate that we wanted to get last week.
Yeah.
I think we are gonna get those issues. We're gonna get hopefully we get real strategies and real plans from
Yeah.
these candidates. And I'm really looking forward to that. So that is happening on Wednesday, October 7th. As of right now, that's still full steam ahead. As far as your voting deadlines, the registration deadline for voting is on Monday. So our podcast will be released on Monday. That's your last day.
October
So
5th.
October 5th, you still can go in and you can register to vote online if you have not done so. We also have mail-in voting is currently going on, but that is not your deadline. You have until October 24th to request your mail-in ballot. Keep in mind that it could take anywhere from a week to 2 weeks to actually for your ballot to be received. And in Florida, it has to be received on November 3rd by 7 p.m. So make sure you're not waiting and holding off. If you do have to do a mail-in ballot, if you're a college student, if you're going to be out of town, or for safety reasons, if you have to do a mail-in ballot, make sure you're requesting that as early as possible.
Yeah.
And then you can still drop that off at either early voting location or at your supervisor of election.
And that's a great thing to remember. Just because you're receiving a mail-in ballot does not mean you need to mail it back in. So like, keep that in mind.
You have options.
Yeah, there's plenty of places to drop it. So if you're afraid of going to the polling place, or like you don't have the time, great, that's fine. Get your mail-in ballot, fill it out, and just drop it. Drop it somewhere. Yeah.
Yep. So we have that. So we have mail-in voting. Early voting in Florida, it varies per county, but it starts as early as the 19th in some counties, and it goes until November 2nd. So keep an eye on that. You want to make sure you're early voting. Don't wait until November 3rd, whether you're doing mail-in voting or you're doing early voting in person. Make sure you go in as soon as possible.
Yeah, because it's going to be a mess this year. So just knock it out, get it out of the way, and let them start counting the ballots now versus like having this overwhelming amount at the end of the day. So get it in as soon as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are located in Tampa, and there's an event that's happening. It's called A Night Out That Matters, and that's presented by Tampa Voices Matter. So this should be a really exciting event. It's happening at the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts.
Ooh,
and it is on
nice.
October 18th from 4 to 6. So it will be an opportunity for people to come out, see some of the candidates in the Tampa Bay area that are up for election, hear from them. There will be entertainment. There will be some opportunities to meet some of your local candidates, as well as just get out and be at a positive event around the election.
Well, I'm excited for that. Will ballot defenders be there?
We will definitely be attending.
Yes, we will.
I'm very excited to attend that since
it's our first public event.
It will be. So if you're also in Tampa Bay area, definitely check them out. They have a social media page where you can purchase tickets, but we will be there, and that's something that we are really looking forward to.
Super awesome. Well, thanks for joining me this week, Miss Sarah. This has been an interesting conversation. I'm hoping for some more positivity coming out of this next week.
Yeah, a little more stuff. Feeling very serious this week with everything that's going on.
But next week's will be interesting because we'll be able to break down the vice presidential debate. Hopefully we'll have some updates on the Trump family's health, so we can kind of have a better idea of how things will be moving forward. So very cool. Well,
absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, guys, and we will
see you next week. Peace out.